Did you know that only about 22.7 million people live in Australia, while the country is home to 200 million rabbits? That means 10 times the human population. These rabbits have caused so much damage and devastation in Australia that the government has officially declared them destructive creatures and has tried everything to get rid of them, without success. For Australia, rabbits are a natural disaster with no easy solution. But now it's interesting to know that China has imported 4 million rabbits over the past 30 years. Not for eating, but for a strange experiment in the Kubuchi Desert. The results of this experiment were so shocking that they amazed the entire world. Well, when a desert starts swallowing green lands and turning them into a barren wasteland, a process called desertification occurs. Now, the biggest victim of this desertification story is the Kubuchi Desert in China. At one point, this desert's condition had become so severe that it was expanding by about 519,000 acres, about 811 square miles annually, meaning the desert, like a relentless monster, was devouring fertile lands and turning them all into sand. To make this number tangible for you, imagine an area roughly the size of the entire city of Houston in the US. A large and populous city that was gradually being consumed by the desert and erased from the map of usable lands every year. Back then, China spared no effort to slow down this rate of desertification. In the 1950s and 1960s, they launched many projects, built sand control stations, and tried to plant trees in the desert. But this sea of sand was out of control, and no one could stop it. Everyone had lost hope. Until one day, a local entrepreneur named Wang Wenbiao changed everything. Wang invested his money in a strange idea. He began placing dry bushes and branches in a square shape across several hundred acres of the desert, and in the middle, he started planting willow trees. The willow is a tree that can survive without water because its roots go down approximately 300 feet to find water. Does this method work in our deserts too? The willow tree is an important tree used not only for making paper, but also for producing furniture. Of course, this tree must meet specific conditions to be used for these purposes. The most important condition is its ability to survive in dry and desert environments like the Kubuchi Desert. There, conditions are much tougher. Fierce and fast winds constantly carried the sand back and forth, causing the moisture within the sand to quickly evaporate and disappear. To combat these harsh conditions, Mr. Wang, who was an expert in agriculture, came up with an interesting idea. He decided to arrange dry bushes around the willow saplings. This action made the bushes act as a kind of protector, shielding the willow saplings from the fierce and merciless desert winds. In the beginning, everyone laughed at Wang, saying, "Look at this lunatic planting trees in the desert." But no one knew Wang's main goal. The first 3 years went well, but then a new problem emerged. When they decided to use these trees for the paper and furniture industry, they realized they had to prune the new branches quickly to get thicker tree trunks. But this task was not only very difficult in the desert conditions, but also very costly. The dry desert lands, the lack of sufficient water resources, and the high costs made the work very challenging for Wang. And this is exactly where the story took an interesting turn, and rabbits entered the scene. Especially a specific breed called the Rex rabbit. The Rex rabbit is a special breed whose fur is like that of a sea otter, very soft, expensive, and luxurious, and is used to make luxury clothing. But the important question here was, why were rabbits brought into this story at all? The answer is much simpler, yet more creative than you might think. It's because rabbits have a very small habit that can turn an entire ecosystem upside down. You should know that Rex rabbits are crazy about eating the thin, fresh, and young shoots of the willow tree. When these rabbits started eating the thin shoots, they were actually performing a task that previously had to be done with human labor and high costs, namely pruning the trees. What was the result? The tree's energy, instead of going to excess branches, focused on the main trunk, and gradually the willow trunk became thicker, wider, and more resilient. This was exactly what the papermaking industry was looking for. Chinese factories bought these thick trunks at high prices. In other words, the rabbits unintentionally became the unpaid yet highly professional workers of the paper industry. And that was just the beginning of the story. On one hand, the environment was being revitalized, and on the other hand, the local economy was slowly getting off the ground. As I said before, willow tree roots can go down about 300 feet. These long, extensive roots spread through the desert sands and, like a natural network, lock the sand particles together. The result was amazing. Once the sand was stabilized, fast winds could no longer blow it into the air. Dust decreased, the ground level calmed down, and most importantly, the moisture trapped in the sand no longer evaporated. This is where the rabbits began another masterpiece. Rex rabbit droppings served as an excellent natural fertilizer. Another important feature of Rex rabbits is that they have the highest reproduction rate among rabbits. A female Rex rabbit could give birth to 50 kits a year. That means their reproduction rate was very high. As the number of rabbits increased, fertilizer increased, and the lands became more and more fertile. In the blink of an eye, those sand dunes turned into farmland. Now, they were also planting and harvesting organic vegetables in those lands. Another very important capability of the Rex rabbits that caused this miracle was that this breed could digest grass, but not the grass seeds. Due to this, the grass seeds exited their droppings completely intact, and after a while, the grasses began to grow and multiply. This means the rabbits not only carried out the maintenance of the willow trees, but also planted grass. And finally, their expensive meat and fur were sold. This process turned into a self-sustaining cycle, and the rabbits officially began to green the desert. After this great success, Mr. Wang did not stop his work. He rented 100 bulldozers and began to level the desert sand dunes. He filled the hollows, smoothed the ground, and planted willow trees in them. During this time, he also encouraged local people to raise Rex rabbits. With the help of the Chinese government, he imported millions of Rex rabbits and distributed them among the people. Every home turned into a small farm. This project continued for 10 years and the entire region changed. That desert, which was uninhabitable, is now green. You should know that the Kibuchi Desert covers a total area of 7,181 square miles. According to the United Nations (UN) report, 33% of it, or 2,413 square miles, of this desert has been greened. This was the result of more than 30 years of effort. Because of this great change, the Kibuchi Desert is no longer called the Sea of Death, but is known as the ecological miracle. But not only did the environment change, the lives of the people also changed, and the Chinese government invested 3 billion yuan, which is approximately $400 million there. With this money, they built new villages and created new jobs for the people in the desert. Today, millions of acres of this desert have created jobs for the people. Over 2,000 farms are active there, and 3 million Rex rabbits are sold every year. The average annual income of each farmer has reached $9,600. This means that people who previously lived around this desert and wanted to flee the desert stayed in the area and have now become wealthy. It is estimated that the lives of 10,000 people have changed and have fully flourished because of this project. A few years later, in 2017, when reporters and media teams visited the area, they saw something that was truly hard to believe. The place that was nothing but sand, dust, and absolute silence just a few years earlier had now turned into a living ecosystem. Trees had grown, grass covered the ground, animals had returned, and most importantly, humans had managed to live alongside nature without destruction. Everything proceeded with a strange and calculated order. No crowding, no chaos. Precisely a true balance. But right here, a big question arises in everyone's mind. If rabbits can green a dead desert, then why did these same rabbits turn into an environmental disaster in Australia? To answer that, we have to go back, way back. Before 1859, there was no such thing as a rabbit in Australia. That year, a British settler decided to import just 24 rabbits into Australia. Not to save nature, not for farming, only for sport and hunting. He thought their numbers would be controlled and the British could enjoy hunting on weekends. But nature doesn't joke. The rabbits began to reproduce non-stop until 70 years later, their population grew so explosively that they virtually went out of control. Farmlands were destroyed, vegetation was lost, and Australia's native ecosystem suffered a serious blow. This is because the rabbits in Australia were simply released into nature, without management, without limits, and without a plan. But China's story is completely different. Here, the rabbits live in a completely controlled environment. Their population is calculated, they are only used as needed, and even their droppings are not wasted. They are used to fertilize the soil and grow plants. This means neither nature is harmed, nor is the animal sacrificed to human mismanagement. And this simple yet vital difference is what makes rabbits a curse in Australia, but a blessing in China. You should know that according to reports, about 50% of the total land surface of the world is either desert or considered dry or semi-arid land. Worse still, nearly 40% of the world's land is currently affected by desertification, meaning lands that are getting poorer, drier, and more unusable every day. It's interesting to know that this crisis is no longer just a problem for Asia or Africa. Today, even Europe and America are closely watching the China model to learn from this economic ecological revolution. Well, thank you very much for staying with us until the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until another video and another scientific news topic, goodbye.